Well. You're listening to Gloves Off with Professor Buitron. Alright then, I may say words on point, straightforward. No jib and jab, everybody forward. Issues, facts and solution. Get it at Gloves Off with Professor Buitron. Alright, one of the thing is a revolution. Get it on point with Professor Buitron. Gloves Off, no nonsense issues, politics, community. A better men follow reader. Gloves Off, a revolutionary show with everything that you need to know. With Professor Buitron. Watch ya!
Gloves Off is always on point. Bringing you the best on current issues, community affairs, and the happenings around us. This segment of Gloves Off is brought to you by the best, so pay them a visit. Check them out. This is Gloves Off.
Back at you with Gloves Off, and I have a great friend, Rich Hale and Kenpo. We're going to touch base on a lot of things in the martial arts and what's going on and how people can train and a little bit of Kenpo. How are we doing today?
Absolutely great. Well, no, I take that back. I tore a calf.
How'd you do that?
I was out trail running, and my wife right now is training for a 50-mile mountain run. Somehow, I thought I could do that still too. I was wrong. I'm just leaping up from one little rock to the next, and it felt like somebody stabbed me with an ice pick in the calf. So I'm relegated back to hiking and maybe running a little bit on the flats and downhill. But hey, it's been a great journey.
Sure. And back in '94, I lost my tendons in my left hand, and I had 11 reconstructive surgeries. Right? And at that time, I was third in the world in the super middleweight division, and they did a transplant of tendons from my calf here. And they said, well, you have an extra tendon. It's called the plantaris. We're going to remove that and put it here. Actually, it's like our appendix. We don't know why we need it. I'm like, oh, okay. So they removed it, and now if I walk for long distances, I cramp up and I can't walk. I go, now what that plantaris was for.
Well, they could possibly say, well, we found an extra. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm no doctor.
It's for something. No, and he put it, oh, it's just like your appendix. We don't know what it was for. I'm like, okay.
Don't you always wonder about the appendix thing too? Okay.
So, but now I know what it's for. Walking long distances. All of a sudden, my left cramps up, my calf cramps up, and I'm like, well, let's talk a little bit about how you've been doing with Kenpo and how's everybody in the living right now and working out. Are you touching base with your students, or how's it going?
And obviously right now, many states are opening back up again, and all my guys are going out there and opening up their schools as best they can. There is a real genuine concern. It's really just now. I mean, like this week, next week, they're opening up, and people are waiting to see who is actually going to come back to class.
Sure.
And that's going to be the telltale thing. And obviously not everybody is going to come back to class.
No.
We experience it much more in jiu-jitsu. It's at least in Kenpo and any other karate system, you have katas, you have basic drills you can do all by yourself and actually get better. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, if you're not rolling with a partner, an opponent, you can't even stay up to normal. So that's going to be, I think, more difficult. And I've got a lot of precious friends in that business that I'm very concerned for. I hope everybody does well. I hope we get through it. We'll see.
I've seen some dear friends of mine, some dear Kenpo, both Gaju Kenpo and Parker, and a lot of them have lost their schools already in Texas. They're not opening back up. They weren't able to sustain it. I have a great school from Grandmaster Orduño from Gaju Kenpo from Houston. He had just opened up a beautiful school in September. Just closed. He called me and he says, "You want to buy some mats?" And I was like, "Fine, what, And
right now would be a great time to buy mats.
I feel for everybody. I feel for everybody really. I see it myself how it's going. We opened up 3 weeks ago. It was very, very hard for people to start coming back in. People are afraid. So of course I teach Kenpo, we teach Capoeira, we teach Savat. Right now the Savat class is really not there because it's a little bit more confrontational. You got gloves, it's just like boxing. Those that do come, they're hitting mitts. They're not doing more how can I put it, sparring or continuous sparring back and forth. You just have to change it a little bit. Things are going to change.
One of the schools in our area has opened up jiu-jitsu and said, you have a large space, much larger than we have in karate or restaurants for yourself and your partner, but they're only allowing, when you get to class, you pick one partner and you work with that person the entire day. And if you guys both show up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then you roll with that person only. It's a start. Our fear is a lot of these bigger clubs have the big fans that we've always used to blow air out the big garage door. And you might as well hug everybody if you got one of those blowing in the room. So
yeah, in California, you're in California, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Are they allowing, does everybody have to wear a mask right now? Is it mandatory?
The teachers must wear a mask. They suggest the students wear them, but it is not required. Just like restaurants, you go in and all of the employees have a mask on, but obviously you're there to eat.
Right.
You can't wear a mask. And students are concerned. They're the ones that are, as we know as teachers, do we work out as hard now as we used to as a student? No. I criticize how badly you're kicking as though I could actually do that myself. So the students would suffocate in those masks.
Absolutely. And I see that here. They have a rough time with the masks on. Texas kind of said, it's up to you. It's not mandatory, but you do have certain municipalities that were, just like Laredo, were placing fines if you didn't wear a mask. So now Texas allows the municipalities to force it upon the businesses. San Antonio is going to start at $1,000. So they'll fine the business if people are not wearing masks. How are they going to enforce that? It's going to be kind of hard. You know what I'm saying?
I've seen these arrogant people. I hate to stereotype somebody, but this guy pulled up in his big black Mercedes. He got out and tucked his shirt in just right, and big guy. And he goes walking into Dunkin' Donuts, and you could just see, like, you tell me to put a mask on. Cracked me up when he turned his ass around and came right back out and got his mask. Because those little kids working in there would not sell him his donut without a mask.
Well,
So it's good they're holding their ground.
It's going to change. Things are going to change. But on another note, what do you suggest folks to work on, especially in Kenpo? You know, of course, we have a forum.
You know, an interesting article I was working on recently is based on questions that people make, and if actually even more comments some people make. Stuff like, well, so Kenpo is a technique-based system, right? And I go, no, it's not. It, just like most other major martial arts, is a basic and kata-based system. Well, they lean forward and move in, and you go, but that said, we are a technique-driven system. So you have in the basics, obviously, you're standing there, punching, blocking, you're getting the rudimentary moves down. You go into kata, and you're learning how to put those into motion. But how do you convert that into a fighting situation? Kenpo techniques are unique in any art that I've studied. And I've studied a lot. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. I've studied Goju a little bit. And I've studied Shorin-Ryu was my original art that I first started in. And all of the self-defense techniques were more like 1 and 2 step sparring. Your partner didn't dummy as if he got hit. You didn't actually touch him. Whereas in Kenpo, we take those movements from our basics and our katas and our sets, move them into a technique, and beat the living hell out of each other. You will learn how to move. If a guy is punching you and you don't tuck that body part out of the way, you're going to get hit in it. So it brings that realism. So once we've done a lot of that, the techniques is what ties it together just short of a real fight. And obviously in our era, there was no shortage of, I remember once, not to talk about fighting all the time, but I did happen to get into this bar fight, but I didn't know it because the guy couldn't fight. And I still thought we were pushing and clowning and 2 drunks, you know, having fun. And then I saw the look on his face and he was all mad. And I go, hey, are we really fighting? I said, because if we are, I'm going to pick it up a little. He goes, no. And then so when I realized we trained so much harder in class and hit each other so much harder, faster, and consecutively that an actual street fight was a joke. Of course, that was based on my size and ability at the time. As I got cockier and tougher and let my reputation known, bigger and bigger people come looking for me. And I quit that. I could no more beat some of these street fighters up than I could beat up a Kodiak brown bear, because they looked a lot more like that brown bear than they looked like me. So
you're absolutely correct. If you fight, whether it's in a tournament or in the ring or in the street, and you win one, people kind of just look at you. Win 2, 3, 4, people start paying attention to you. Once you win a couple more, all of a sudden people are looking to test you.
Oh yeah.
And that's the difference, you know. And once people find that out, you're going to have people that are going to try to test you because you know how to fight. And that is something that's always plagued me like a magnet, you know. No matter where you went, there was somebody that, oh, he does this, so, you know, had somebody that would come to pick a fight on, you know, and it's kind of hard to evade, but you have to learn how to use it and how to change things. You know, I remember one guy came in there and it was not my day. And and the guy came in and basically I told him, hey, nice shirt, man, where'd you get it? And then we started talking about shirts and we started talking about something else, and his mind went elsewhere instead of trying to get into a fight with me. You know, I said, you know, I'm just going to scheme the whole thing and not go at it fisticuffs right away.
If I get back, I know we're going to have a tendency to get off track with old war stories, but the idea is what people can do in Kenpo right now is go back to your basics.
Sure.
It's no different than, like right now, I have a torn calf muscle. And that doesn't mean I can't do push-ups. It doesn't mean I can't do sit-ups. It doesn't mean I can't do pull-ups. Perfect exercise for a guy with a hurt leg. It's just a matter of fighting through the downward spirit of, oh, I'm hurt, I feel sorry for me. There's a lot of things I can do. I can study, I can read. How many of us actually read and study our material enough in the first place? Right now, I really suggest any martial artist get out there and work on their basics, work on their forms, work on air techniques, but think about them, analyze them, think about the logic behind it. Would this work in a real situation? Debate with yourself. You know, we've got a lot we can do. We just have to look at what we can do instead of looking at what we can't do.
No, you're absolutely correct. Basics, you know, a man that's good in his basics is a hard man to beat. And right now is the time to start building back up on that. And schools should go back to the basics. It's the best way to maintain the school open, teach, correct, and move forward. Right now, it's about building the foundation.
Everybody that I've talked to has said, of course we're not sparring. Of course we're not doing techniques on one another. One of the things that I had seen, I was a member of a Kenpo school out in this region, and it was a frustrating day for me because I am trying to teach children. Ed Parker didn't have children in mind when he created these techniques. So I line up 6 kids to do a technique. 3 of them are supposed to fall. 6 kids fall. They tangle up in arms and legs and everybody falls and no, and help, and I'm working, and I left frustrated. Nobody had broken a sweat. And I stopped. Literally within 200 yards was a Taekwondo school. And these guys were doing squat kicks. It must have been a contest, but they're squat kicking and kicking and kicking and kicking and catching their breath and standing up and cheering and going on. And at the end of the day, they got a hell of a workout, a lot better than we did, because sometimes in Kenpo, we get mired down in the amount of material we have, the complexity of it all, the intellectual Kenpo concept, and they forget to train. I hope this is an opportunity for these people to get back out there and train. Well, one of the big advantages we had as 70 Kenpoists, not very many of my instructors in the 70s came up in Kenpo.
Yeah.
My original instructor, Richard Callahan, was a Goju black belt, Shotokan black belt, hell of a fighter. Him and Tom Kelly and Benny the Jet would go down to Texas and find great fights. And then Ed Parker said, hey, Callahan, do you want to run a Kenpo school for me? He goes, I don't know Kenpo. Nah, it doesn't matter. You hit, you kick, you can fight. I'll have Huck Planis come by and he'll teach you the techniques and forms. So when I started taking it, we still had basics. We still did exercises and push-ups and squats and kicks and trained. That was at least half of our class. Then we had the material. Nowadays, they tend to go in there and do all material and no training. Yeah, no basics, no training.
You're absolutely correct. And people have to come back down to their basics. I think it's around the way. It's a wake-up call to everybody. Start building those foundations.
Experience, and here's the story. Sad story, but it came out okay. One of my buddies came to me that owned a school, and we're talking about things, and I go, so tell me, how often do you wash your gi? He goes, well, I take it home every Friday, you know, if I need to or not. And I laughed and I go, man, do you remember when after every class you take that gi, you throw it on the mat and it goes whop, like a big wet rug hitting it. He goes, wow, yeah. I say, this is what's happened to Kenpo. If you can leave a karate class in a fresh gi, you haven't studied karate.
You're absolutely correct.
You taught me when I got into jiu-jitsu, because wow, that was the day. But now my jiu-jitsu gis, of course, are 5 times as thick and heavy, and you have that same good wet gi, and when you want to drop it on the mat, you want to hear that whop, and you go, man, I miss this. I feel good now. So maybe they'll get into some basics, and people will start getting an affinity toward exercise instead of an affinity towards knowledge alone as being their criteria to being a great martial artist.
You're right. You're right.
I know.
Here goes with another one. No, but you're right on the basic. I mean, we all need them. I mean,
Yeah, we do.
here's a question. And you've been around. Who besides Mr. Parker was the one that influenced you the most in Kenpo?
Well, actually, Mr. Parker would be third in line. You know, there's so many guys that all it takes is for them to have one seminar and a fuzzy picture with Ed Parker, and they'll swear they grew up in his basement and they were like this, you know, they were tight. My first and foremost karate teacher was Richard Callahan. Always has been, always will be. He made me into a martial artist. He tolerated every bad aspect of my life, and he made me something. After that, I moved to Alaska and I met A.C. Rainey. A.C. Rainey took what Rich had built and built it into something more. After that came Mr. Parker. I loved the time I spent with him. I was greatly influenced because I must admit, if Rich or AC would say something, I would go, yeah, okay, you know, whatever. Ed Parker says something and you're hanging on every word. You go home and practice it forever, because if I'm ever in front of Mr. Parker, I want to nail it. And of course, Rich and AC were like, wow, wish you would do that around me. You'd be amazing. So he had a great influence. I think he had a great influence on everybody. When you consider the fact that he didn't teach everybody Kenpo in the 60s, 70s, 80s, but now hundreds of thousands of people study Kenpo because of the presence he had and the message that he left. So absolutely, my biggest people is Rich Callahan, A.C. Rainey, Ed Parker. Rick Hughes is another person who is my big brother. He's never really been my teacher, but as a big brother, he's always kept me on track. And when he says and does something, he's one of the best Kenpoists in the world. His knowledge, his physical ability, though he's a little older, somewhat like me and yourself, but he still has it. Tony Martinez, Senior, is another great and dear friend, a mentor to me that I just, you know, if I can live my life and be loved by as many people as him, for half as many people as love Tony, that'd be a great place to be. And then it goes on. I mean, there's so many people out there who have been a great influence, not just seniors. You know, Frank Trejo, senior to me, certainly, same age as me, a great inspiration. But there's also people that are younger than me and have been in Kenpo for half as long that have shown me things that I never imagined.
Sure.
It's all encompassing.
Absolutely. You're right about that, because Kenpo's a huge family. You're always going to be learning. Nobody knows the full amount of Kenpo. I mean, there's a couple that are there, but Kenpo's a big puzzle. Everybody has a little piece of it.
Right. You know,
And
I'll tell you something, Paul, and what you just exactly said was, I'll make this quick. I have a lot of stories. I had, quickly, for some of your guys that might not know me, when I started my time with Ed Parker, I was in Alaska. I came back and forth a little bit. And then when I moved to California, moved back to California, I got a time slot with Mr. Parker at his home every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. So I'd have private lessons, and the stories abound. And one day he came into me and he says, I had a vision or a dream that I'm going to die. And of course, I was shocked. I didn't want to hear it. And my hair is standing up. And he talked a little bit. And I said, when? When did you have that? And I'm thinking last night. And he'd go, 10 years ago. What? And he goes, my brother died. And he says, I felt it was so close to me. I felt like it was me who was going to die. And he says, since then, that's why I wrote Infinite Insights into Kenpo. He said, I know I'm going to die young. I have to put in writing my system, my thoughts, everything, so that people have it when I'm gone. Well, now I kind of worked up the nerve and I said, okay, now that you brought it up, who's going to be in charge when you're gone? And his exact words, well, everybody will have a part because nobody has it all.
Absolutely.
And that was the end of our conversation on that one.
You know, and you see it with everybody that's there. You see it with Mr. Pick and how he moved and how his determination.
Oh, yeah.
And you see it with my Sifu Keith C, and you see it with Frank, and you see it with Huck, especially. With everybody, LaBounty, everybody had a little quirk, and all of a sudden, okay, that just clicked on. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't a better way of doing it or an easier way of doing it. Just a light just clicked on, you know, in your head. And I've seen it with others. I've seen it with people in Gajo Campo that come in there, and even though they're brother arts, you know, and they do something and you go like, man, okay. Or we do something and you're in their presence and they'll click off and they go, now that helped us, you know? And it's because it's just a big old family. And I think that respect is amongst everybody. I think everybody respects that. There's some knuckleheads out there, but the vast majority respects that it is a big family.
Well, when I was starting in Kenpo in the 70s, 72 is when I started, that we had a bumper sticker and it said the ultimate in self-defense. So I was like, wow, how lucky am I? I signed up at a school that just happens to be the ultimate in self-defense. And I believed it for years. You know, I'm young, I'm impressionable, and it was good art, and it still is. But is it, quote, the ultimate? No, but if I opened a school, I might very well call it the ultimate karate school. Because people are going to drive by and see it and go, oh, why did they name someplace best foods? You know?
Yeah, I know you're absolutely correct.
It's marketing. But, you know, Mr. Parker said, like, when pure fist hits pure flesh, that's karate, something like that. So, yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I've heard it very
better than any other martial art. You know, I just had an interview the other day with somebody on a martial arts magazine, a buddy of mine, and we were talking about that kind of stuff, and it was that Kenpo itself doesn't differ from any other martial art in how anything is applied. We all turn our hips. We all drop our body weight and drive forward into a punch. We all want to move our head out of the way as we block, because if you were to punch, you already have a head start. So if I bring my arm up from my side with your punch on the way, I am going to get hit. The only chance I have of not getting hit is while your fist is moving 24 inches or more, I move my head over a couple inches. Everybody does that. The biggest difference in Kenpo is Mr. Parker systematized it. So he put it in there in such a way as it's called marriage of gravity, and it's called backup mass and obviously torque. So you can talk to a student and say, okay, your technique is good, but you lack torque. You need to twist your hips. When I started, in every system I studied outside of Kenpo, it was always make like this, do this way, watch me. No, wrong, watch again. And most people say, oh, I need to see, but that's why they called Mr. Parker the magician of motion. You can't really see. That's what makes a magician a magician. You can't really see what they're doing. They trick you. So if I'm watching a guy perform a perfect karate or jiu-jitsu technique, I miss most of what happens. I do this in jiu-jitsu. I watch a video. One of the greatest instructors on the planet is a man by the name of John Danaher. I got all of his videos. It'll take me my lifetime to get through them. But I watch it, I got it. I go out with my guys and I try to do it and I fail. And I go back in and I go, what? And I watch the video and I realize I missed key elements. So I go back, I'm a little better, and I look at the video again, I missed other elements. You can't just look and see. Mr. Parker has it broken down in such a way is if you take the time to read it, to study it, it will enlighten you into all these things that you've been doing wrong. Not everybody wants to study that way. I had a guy in Alaska very quickly. This guy came in and wanted to study karate. I talked to him for 2 hours. He called me and said, Mr. Hale, I really appreciated you. You definitely sounded like you knew what you were talking about, but I'm not going to pick you. I'm picking this other guy. And I go, I got to ask, why? He goes, I just passed the bar exam. I don't want to study. All I want is some guy to tell me to hit, kick, and punch, and I just do it. And I said, I have a guy for you. So not everyone learns and appreciates and enjoys the same thing. So
Absolutely.
this
And
is my art. Other people have theirs.
You know, I see it. You know, I was very fortunate to grow up with Keith C. and meet everybody around. You know, and
Now, when you say Keith C., a lot of people don't know who you're talking about.
a lot of people don't. You might, but some others might not.
You tell the audience.
Yeah, and Keith C. was my chief when Keith C. was from Hawaii, and in '94
All the
he
good
ended
ones
up
are from Hawaii.
and he ended up going underneath Mr. Parker, and I think he's up here somewhere. And the big Hawaiian man, you know, he was about 6'2", that weighed about 300 and some odd pounds, and he could move like lightning. And to the day, I've yet to see somebody move as fast as he has. The only person that has come close to hitting as hard as he has is Huck. Frank hit hard, but Huck hits harder.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so. I love Huck, but Frank hit really hard.
No,
See,
but
I've taken a
Frank-
number of lessons. I used to go visit Huck in Chico. When he lived in Chico, I'd fly from Alaska just to go visit Huck. And his knowledge and everything was just amazing. But it was a lot more one-on-one and lessons and just, you know, like just absorbing Huck.
Yeah.
Frank, you go down there to get hurt, basically.
No,
You can hobble back onto that airplane and go home.
And then, you know, he'll come in here and he'll tell everybody, and goes, okay, try me, especially with his sticky hand. He was slapping everybody around. And, you know, Frank is very well missed. Very well missed.
You know, I tell you a great story on Frank. When I first met Frank, I thought we were going to be buddies because Rich Callahan and Frank were good buddies. So I'm visiting, I'm still from Alaska, and I'm visiting and I'm working out. He wouldn't even look at me. Now, there was another guy down there, Paul Gerard, and Paul was like a protege of Frank's. We were good friends. And I told him, I said, Paul, I don't get it, man. Frank won't even look at me. I go, no, it's because he thinks you're a social climber. I go, I didn't even know the term. It was totally new to me. I'm from Alaska. We don't have social tiers up there. We're like Texas. We're a suburb of Texas, I think. I go, social climber, and he goes, oh yeah. You know, you go to Mr. Parker's, you go to Larry's, you go see Huck, you go everywhere. I go, okay. Yeah, so he just thinks you're just social climbing. I go, oh. I said, Paul, you know, I can fight. He go, I know. Frank don't know that. The next day I went in there, I fought for 2.5 hours. I fought everything on 2 feet. Frank walks by, looks at me, and he goes, not bad for a white boy. What? Yes! Frank Trejo spoke to me, right to me. And then the next thing you know, once I work, you got to buy your way in. You know, you got to bleed your way into that group. And now Frank, he's taking us to Van Halen concerts, and me and him are going out and drinking all night and eating chicken and ribs and sleeping on the mats and having the greatest time. But you don't get in if you don't pay the price. Miss him dearly. Everyone does, you know. Next to Mr. Parker, he's been the biggest loss in all of Kenpo. Well, I can't say that. Mr. Kelly, that's a stupid statement. So,
you know, we have many. We just lost 2 in the last month. We lost Mr. Labounty, and we lost his student.
Yeah.
You know, and we lost several others. Apparently, 2 more. Huck told me, but I just forget their name.
Yeah. Well, it's that, Paul, I'll tell you, and I'll tell the audience, and I don't joke about this anymore, but it's a lesson every single one of us have to pay attention to. A long time ago, 15 years ago, I was telling a buddy of mine, I said, I'm going to be the most sought after person who ever studied with Ed Parker, for seminars, for everything. I'm going to be it. And they're looking at me and they're thinking, man, you got Frank, you got Huck, you got some people out there. How in the hell are you going to surpass them? I said, I'm just going to wait for these old fat sons of bitches to die. And when they're all gone, I'm going to be the only one who ever studied with Ed Parker. And, maybe it's a little bit of bad taste. And I'm saying it for this purpose, you guys. There's other people, a very, very dear friend of mine, Sean Kelly down in Florida. Years ago, we got together and said, look, are we going to be the example of the guy that dies of a heart attack at the airport like Mr. Parker did? Now, Mr. Labouty, obviously that wasn't his case. A lot of people, it's not their case. And even people who are apparently overweight, that doesn't mean they're unhealthy. But many people don't train. They're living on their laurels. They hook their thumbs in their belt and they walk around and criticize what other people do. A true martial artist will do what they can to the best of their ability to the day they die. We got to remember that, because if you don't train, you will die. You're going to die anyway. You're going to die sooner.
It's how you're going to die. It's how you're going to die that matters. And
anybody could die. I could die of a heart attack tomorrow. We had a really great jiu-jitsu instructor in our neighborhood that I'm talking to him one day and he goes, check this out, Rich. And he pulled up his shirt, boom, boom, no fat, never had any, never will. He died of a massive heart attack a year later. And, anybody could die. There was that old runner that died after he wrote a book about running, and people see, but how many people die every single day in America in a lazy boy recliner? Just a lazy boy, not even another brand.
Many. No. We had we became good friends, more like brothers. He was a Gaju Kenpo. He was a grandmaster at Gaju Kenpo. His name was Michael Blea, out of New Mexico.
Gaju Kenpo, I've heard of that. Is that a
it's kind of
martial art? Is that something
it's something that's found out of Hawaii, just like Hawaii. Yeah,
that's right.
Hawaii, the little island over there.
My first black belt was in the Gaju Kenpo Association.
Right.
Richard Callahan tested for, it wasn't for a certain degree, they awarded him third, but he tested in front of Al DeCoscos and Al Reyes Sr. in 1969 in Hawaii. And all he did was display his abilities from white belt to black belt, turned in his giant binder of everything he'd ever written, everything he'd ever thought into them. They awarded him a third-degree black belt in the International Gaju Kenpo Association, and, if you've ever seen this, an instructor's certificate.
Sure.
And then they gave him a handful of Gaju Kenpo certificates to promote other people on. When I got my black belt from Rich Callahan, I got it on the Gaju Kenpo Association certificate. So obviously it's a lot closer to me. If you could look at my crest, of course, you'll see the Gaju Kenpo in it. Many times in my life, I have thought, I wonder, not that I care, but what would my life have been like had I picked Gaju Kenpo instead of Kenpo?
Yeah, you still be a Kenpoist. That's a difference. But I was getting back, Michael Blea, we became very great friends, great athlete, great guy. Michael Blea.
Yeah.
And massive heart attack. The person that was fit, he had just come, he would do marathons, he would do, a bunch of stuff like that.
Well, this jiu-jitsu instructor died of a massive heart attack at the school, and at the hospital, the doctor said that could have happened on the operating table and we couldn't have saved him. But I'm not going to stack the deck. I'm going to outlive everyone. I'm going to be 130 or 40 before I die. So I'm wrong. You know, this is an interesting thing, Paul. I've never thought of this before, if I may. In Alaska, I took my students out to the field, out into the park, and we're training, which was so great during that 2 weeks of summer that we have. And they would run, and I set up 2 staffs, and they ran, not jumped over them, but beside them, and they would jump. One guy made it, another guy almost made it, another guy totally cleared it. And then when they're doing training, I roll the stick forward. Okay, you guys, jump again. The same person that almost made it. The same person that just made it. And the other guy that totally cleared it looked at me. I did it again and again. And then he came up and said, "You're moving the stick." I go, "How do you know that?" He says, "Because when I jump, man, I fly. I just come down wherever I come down, and that stick is catching me." The other people that almost made it, and I moved it 4 feet, and he still almost made it. The one that barely made it made me more mad than the guy who almost made it, because he just made it every time. Well, on physical fitness and longevity, I look at it as I'm shooting for the moon. I want to be the longest living person on the planet. So mentally, I have that side taken care of. I'll never quit. Physically, I could die tomorrow, but I'm not going to sell myself short. I'm going to fly.
You know, I looked at all. Yeah, that's a great way to look at. You know, and I've been lucky to have had great instructors and great friends and brothers in the arts, and I look at myself and I say, you know, we're all going to go. We're all going to die. We just don't know our time. So whatever we do now, we have to influence others to be better than us in what we wanted to be.
Oh, absolutely.
And so to me, that's the way I look at martial arts now. I want my students to be the better student that I was, the better martial artist that I was, for them to understand that this is something moving forward. I tell some parents now, and because the parents come in there, and it's usually the hobby martial artists, you know, they come out here and mom has to go do her nails and shopping, so they need to put little Billy in a place.
Of course.
And then you're like, okay, you know, well.
Oh, people do that?
Yeah, they still do that. And then you got the guys that come out here and they just want to learn everything in 1 week, and it's not going to happen. So I basically tell the parents now, and I go, look at it as their education, because they can actually take this and use it as a vocation in the future.
You know, when you talked about having somebody that was better, that your goal is to create someone better than you. I've done that. And when I mentioned John Danaher earlier, he's a student of Renzo Gracie, and he was being interviewed, and he goes, well, the mark of a great instructor is create something better than yourself. And for people to have the humbleness to be able to actually say that. How many people with the last name Gracie is going to say, I've created somebody better than me? And in my case, it's obvious I've got a guy who's better than me, not Ned Parker's Kenpo, but a greater, more expansive martial artist. And we should be able to do that. I mean, every parent, can you imagine a dad that says, you know, you're a pretty smart kid, but you're not as smart as the old man. You're going to do good, but you're not going to do as good at me. You know, I'm the head. I don't want to insult any occupation, but I'm the head this, and it's not very high. And then the kid goes on to cures cancer, you know, and now the father hates him because he's so good. No, you've got to embrace that. That is truly, it is absolutely my goal.
That's the goal.
I want all of my people to be better than me. You know, there's a great guy, Angelo Colato. Angelo is absolutely one of the best Kenpo guys on the planet. Really good. And not just at what he does, but how he can teach it and everything. And his son, AJ. We were talking and he goes, you know, Mr. Hale, my dad is trying to give me everything it took him 40 years to learn in 20 years. so that by the time I'm his age, I'll, and I go, AJ, man, and I just hugged him. That's a real dad. Now, in this case, it is AJ's actual dad, but every true martial artist with every student looks at him like flesh and bone. You want them to do better than you.
Years ago, I had a team that I took to the state in Golden Gloves, and we did very, very well. And I was talking to the boxing commissioner of Texas. His name at that time, the boxing commissioner at that time was Dickie Cole. Great fighter in his day, knew boxing left and right. And he says, you know something? And he called me, Coach, you know something, Coach? I want you to realize this. Because my guys had won the Golden Gloves. He goes, the parents are never going to thank you. And I was just listening to him. He goes, but they'll talk about you if they lose. But if they win, they learned everything about fighting out of the womb. And I kind of just looked at him. And through the years, taking people to compete and stuff like that, that's what I started realizing. You know what? He became a natural champion, became a champion of this, became a champion in the United States, international champion, and so on and so forth. You weren't the one that taught him. He had all the natural ability left and right, But the instant he lost, you didn't train him fairly. You didn't train him well enough for this fight. Understand what I'm getting at? Huh?
Totally. I don't know if I can find this picture, but okay, I did. Now, I was in Chile, Santiago. Amazing event that we had down there. 450 people at a seminar. 250 people on Saturday, and the balance came in on Sunday. It was great. And I'm one of the stars of the show. And these young guys come up, Master, can you show us your best kick? I go, absolutely. I go,
there it is.
Here it is. And they go, no, Master, we need it. I go, I totally know what you mean.
They can't do it now.
And if you can't embrace that and enjoy it and laugh at it, hey, come on. I'm 68 years old. I am thrilled at my physicality. I'm happy as can be, but I am not that 27-year-old. I think now, my God, I rocked at 50. At 50, I'm like, oh, I'm 50. Oh my God, what I did for 50, almost 20 years ago now. So, to give to these guys, give openly. Don't be that guy. Here's what I've seen happen a lot, Paul, is when people quit actually performing, we start focusing on everything we know. And that is bad. That is dangerous. I had a guy call me and he goes, Mr. Hale, I'm sorry, but my instructor, I can't do anything right. He said, 5 years ago, he loved me. I was his best student, and now everything I do is wrong. And I looked at him as on a phone like we're doing, and I go, this is absolute proof that your instructor no longer works out at all. And he stopped, and I used to ice skate. Before I started karate, I ice skated 10 years. I passed my audition for the Ice Capades. I could do all those spins and flips and powerful and dynamic stuff. To this very day, I can see me launching myself into the air, pivoting, landing, hitting a spin, locking the motion, perfection. I was never that good. I would have never been that good. But because it's in my brain, I have to fight that tendency to no, look, your toe, it moved. And too many people get wrapped up in that. We have to remember who we were, where we came from, how hard it was. And now people can go out there and we can watch them and go, wow, you're way, way better than I was at your level, and appreciate it and build them. from the
Absolutely.
bottom up, not tear them from the top down.
Absolutely. And sometimes students plateau. It's
Of course
not
we do.
natural. They're going to plateau.
Life is like this and this.
So we have to,
always
instead of them going down, we have to start pushing them to continue moving upward somewhere along the line.
No, I
Because
believe in a plateau. It's like, hey, dude, kick back, relax, have fun, enjoy yourself. Here's what I found in the martial arts through all of my years. If you are really in love with the martial arts, I can't beat you away from martial arts with a baseball bat. But if you don't like it, this happened to me in my school in Ventura, California. I was real new. I didn't know my way around. I just moved here from Alaska. And a guy came up to me and said, well, Mr. Hale, I'm quitting. Oh, why? I've moved. Oh, where? He says, I moved to Camarillo. And I go, okay, man, I'm going to miss you. I really like this guy. After class, I asked my wife at the time, and I said, where's Camarillo? She goes, it's about 10 miles down the road, down the freeway. Why? And I go, that son of a bitch. I drove 100-mile round trip every single class for 4.5 years. I lived in Big Bear Lake. My class was in San Bernardino. It's what I did. And this guy quit because
he couldn't drive 10 miles.
Ride was 10 miles on a freeway. And that's it. You can't make those people stay. I know other people. I've had people. Very, very quick story again. I had this guy from Guatemala contact me and say, Mr. Hale, can you sign my certificate? You weren't here for my test. I said, let me see it. He sent me a copy and I go, I hate to tell you, but it's fake. It's fraudulent. They had taken my certificate and very badly superimposed his name on it and awarded him. And I said, I've never heard of you. I've never heard of your teacher. I'm sorry. He goes, sir, what do I do? And I said, look, I have long distance students, but I don't have a single one who I haven't met and worked with in person. So I know who you are, how you feel. So until we train together, I can't teach you abroad. And 2.5 years later, he wrote me and said, Mr. Hale, I've saved the money. I want to bring you to Guatemala. 2.5 years to save $500 to get me to Guatemala. And the guy, when I got there, he reminds me of me in 1972.
He wants to learn. And those people that want to learn, I see that here.
He did everything to get there. I've had other people, total opposite.
I have a police officer from the town of Alice. He drives up here twice a week to learn, before COVID.
Well, you're obviously not a Democrat. You're not allowed to have police officer friends.
And he comes up here to train twice a week. Now I haven't seen him for the last 3 months, but he says he's going to start back.
Probably busy.
But,
yeah, sorry, Paul.
It happens, but people that want to learn are going to drive. Period.
Yeah, they're going to do it. They'll do any and everything they have to do it. Period. From the day I started karate, I lived in Big Bear Lake. For 6 months, I drove up and down to Victorville, which is, again, a 100-mile round trip. And then after I got to Alaska and I hooked up with Mr. Parker, I would spend $2,000 on a weekend just to go see Mr. Parker. And if I was super lucky, I'd get to see Huck on the same weekend. And it wasn't ever a matter of money. It was if I had the money, that's what I would spend it on.
Absolutely.
And it's no harm against people that aren't into it that much. I mean, gosh, there's people out there, there's ultra runners, people that are incredible and amazing, and musicians who have spent more time in the studio than I have chasing their art. And God bless them. I love them all. I just happen to be a karate guy. So.
Right. All righty. Anything you want to tell folks out there?
you know, we could go on for 6 or 8 more hours, I guess. But, you know, hang in there, guys. Everyone will find a way. Everybody will find a way to train. What I'm doing right now is I have a next door neighbor who his father has Alzheimer's, or his father-in-law has Alzheimer's. They're extremely careful about grocery shopping, getting near anyone. My wife and I are very much lived at home here all this time. And he and I train together because it's almost like he lives here. So what I've done is I have picked one person to train with, one jiu-jitsu person. And I have one karate student, but I could have more. That, you know, it's different when you're doing that. But for the jiu-jitsu guys, you may or may not choose to take that chance. Find one person to train with so you can keep your hand in. Karate people, be respectful, wear the mask. How hard is it really to wear a mask? I've hiked Mount Whitney 18 times. That's 14,000 feet. I've hiked Kilimanjaro. If I can hike Mount Kilimanjaro at 19,500 feet, I could wear a mask at sea level. People are just spoiled. Embrace what you want. Get out there and take it, but take it safely, comfortably. Try not to offend people. Do your best, but go for it.
Absolutely. Brother, it's always great to talk to you.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Here's my, there we go. Love you, buddy.
And we'll see you soon. We'll get together. Take care,
Paul. You know, you're on my short list as soon as this thing opens up where I get to fly.
And we'll see you soon. All righty. Peace.
All right, my friend. Bye now.